So today, I'm truly honored to welcome Faye-Ellen Silverman, a pioneering composer, dedicated educator, and a voice of extraordinary depth in contemporary music to our conversation. Welcome, and thank you so much for
It's a lovely introduction. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's so honor and so happy to see you again. So my first question is, you had such an extraordinary early start in music. Could you reflect on how your earliest experience shaped your relationship with creativity and discipline?
Sure. There's a lot to talk about in terms of this. First of all, I was born with the correct parents. In other words, they encouraged me. They trained me in various things. It was wonderful. It contributed to who I am today, not only from their encouragement, but from the activities they got me involved in. One of them was the Dalcroze School of Music, which I started to. You may have heard of it.
Yes, yes.
It's an epic for rhythm and movement and music. It is good for smaller children. And so my cousins had gone. And so I started going a little before my fourth birthday. My birthday was a little bit after the school year. I went because my mother discovered that when she had me sitting by the radio with classical music on, I would stop running around like a tyrant, how fast kids are. So keep me a little bit quiet.
Right.
Discovered that I liked music. So I started going, and the training there gave me so much. First of all, one of the things they do is they emphasize rhythm. So you learn to work with rhythm in various ways. And one of the ways that one works with rhythm is through stepping. Like you skip if there's a dot at 8/16, you run if there are eighth notes. You learn to use your body. You start with the heart. It starts with the idea of the heartbeat, and the heartbeat is of music. We had to do all kinds of things that never seemed difficult because we weren't allowed to think they were difficult. So when I was in elementary school, we were stepping in 3 and conducting in 2. And later on, we were stepping in 5 and conducting in 3. I mean, all kinds of, I don't know that I could still do. And then there was a lot of improvisation because as people moved, there was somebody at the piano improvising, which gave one a sense of freedom. There was a lot of use of percussion instruments. There was a lot of sight singing going on. We weren't given a choice. We were just given this 4-part music. And I realized looking back that I was singing the inner part of some Brahms choral music, which was really difficult, but I was singing them today. Those days, I mean. So it was not something I could necessarily do again. Maybe I couldn't do it today, but as a child, I was doing all of it because nobody told me it was difficult, and doing performing and all kinds of things like that. And the most important part, I think, was that we had to do weekly composition assignments. We didn't have a choice. In those days, the males really worked. And so if you were sick on a Saturday, it was after nursery school, which is during the week, it was on Saturdays. Sick on a Saturday, or you couldn't come in for some reason, you'd get a postcard in the mail with your assignment. It was every week an assignment. Wow. Yes. I only remember this because I came across the postcard several years ago. It said you want to do, and it was a specific assignment. And every Friday night I'd write music, and every Saturday I'd go in and do it. So it became a natural part of life. Couldn't wait for inspiration. I had to do my assignment, just like you'd have to do an English assignment or another assignment. Right. That was one part. And then I'm sorry, this is going to be probably my longest answer because this has...
No. I love to hear it. Everything of yours.
Well, the second thing is that I was enrolled in Sundays until I turned 13 in something called the Shalom Aleichem Volksschule, which was a way of learning Jewish traditions without doing it in a religious way, without going through a synagogue. And they taught us Yiddish, and they taught us the language. They taught us Jewish history. They taught us Jewish music, and they taught us Jewish folk dances. And that music had an influence on me. I wasn't totally sure about it, but when right before I went to college, I spent a year at Manhattan School of Music after 12 years at Dalcroze because I wanted private composition lessons. And that teacher pointed out to me that instead of writing by fifths, which is what normally you would do, I was writing by seconds, which was coming out of the Jewish music. So, and then a lot of the pieces that I learned or I was exposed to or my family exposed me to came up later in my compositions. A lot of my, not all, but several of my compositions are influenced by my Jewish tradition.
Oh, wow.
The third part, sorry.
No, I love to hear it. Please.
Okay. The third part was I went to a camp called Camp Woodland. And Camp Woodland very much put an emphasis on collecting folk and folk materials. And Pete Seeger came every year. And so I grew up with a whole folk tradition. And that was music that I knew. And I'm not exactly exactly sure how that influenced me, but I'm sure it must have influenced me. And the fourth thing was just the idea of performing, which I think is so important for a composer. So I not only studied piano, that was my first instrument for 20 years, but in elementary school, I took up clarinet so that I could play, basically because my mother told me I could play anything but the violin because she didn't want to hear it. She didn't know how much a squeak could be on a clarinet, obviously.
I see.
Oh yeah, so we did that, and one of the things that we did is that I studied clarinet, and I played in school bands, and I played in school orchestras, and I played in dance bands, and I played, you name it, I played it, and sometimes I had to transpose because it might be an A clarinet part or an E flat clarinet part.
Wow.
If you thought about it, you had to do it, you did it. In fact, quite frankly, I still transpose by interval and not by clef because of that. And then I took up the viola for the last 2 years of high school because I left for college a year early. I didn't play it long enough, but at least I had some exposure to strings and string writing. And also, I sang in a lot of choruses and all kinds of choruses. And I think that taught me a lot about how to write for the voice. So I think that all this practical experience put certain sounds into my ears and certain practicalities into my ears. And I knew from playing that woodwinds have to breathe, string players have to bow, they like finale, it doesn't,
Right.
all this stuff.
Uh-huh.
I think it was really important. The composing, I think, made me a better writer for instrumental and for larger ensembles and for vocal music. So
Wow, that's so much inspiration. Just you live with the music.
well, I loved it, but of course, I obviously did others. I had a very normal childhood, and my father took me ice skating and took me to play tennis and, did a lot of normal things. I went to regular camps except for 1 year. I didn't go to music camp. So all of that influenced who I became today.
Right. So were you born and raised in New York City?
I was born in New York City. My parents moved to the suburbs when I turned 5 because the public schools in New York City were not very good. I still, but I don't know. And so we moved first to Yonkers and then to Mount Vernon just for the school systems. But I came into the city every week to go to music school, and from music school, we'd go visit my uncle who lived downtown. So that became, I was very familiar with New York. I'd go into New York at 13 and 14 to go folk dancing. At that time, kids could travel alone, so I was always connected to New York.
Okay. Wow. That's so interesting. And you have a big family in New York?
No, my father, when he came over here, my father was an immigrant from Russia, and he brought over 2 of his brothers, but the rest of his family refused to come. And my mother had a brother and sister who lived in Brooklyn with my grandfather, so I only knew one grandfather. His wife, my grandmother, institutionalized when I was in my teens. I never got to know her, and I never got to know the parents of my father, because they were killed in World War II. So
Okay. Oh, okay.
I do have a brother and a sister-in-law, but I don't have a big family.
Ah, okay. But you have a sibling. Oh,
I do.
okay. Yeah. Okay. So your sibling also live near your place?
My brother and sister-in-law live an hour and a quarter on the train north. They live in New York. They live, if you've heard of Katona, where they have a famous music festival, they live near there. It's
Okay.
another stop past there,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
about an hour and a quarter on the train.
Uh-huh. Wow. I mean, the New York City has been developing so much when you were young and compared to now.
Well, it's always been developing.
Right.
If I moved the computer outside to the window, you would see all the construction going on. And they built up Hudson Yards, which is not far from me, which is like this very large, overcrowded development.
Oh, I see. I see.
Where I live now, when I moved in, there was one art gallery. There are now probably, I don't know, 300, I don't know how many, but tons of art galleries.
Right.
The city's constantly been building and growing.
I see. I see. I mean, New York is always like a dream city for many people who especially, in relate to arts. So I love to hear like those development and how it's seen before. And, you lived the whole time in New York and New York City. So I was very curious. Well, it's really interesting to hear it. So thank you so much.
Almost the whole time. I did spend 2 years in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I did spend 9 years in Baltimore.
Oh, okay. Because of school or
Teaching. Well, Cambridge was for my master's at Harvard.
Wow.
Baltimore, I was teaching at Goucher and at Peabody, and then just at Peabody. So I lived in Baltimore, and then I was there.
Okay.
back.
Could you share a little bit about your music institution where you study and how to choose those schools?
You mean where I chose to study?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that this would be the most useful advice. When I applied to college, I applied a year early, and I got into the Eastman School of Music. But I got in, I didn't realize at that time you could apply in composition, not even say, well, so I applied in music ed on the piano, and I got in. But I was 16. I mean, I turned 17 about a month after school started. And I was being honest. I never told anybody, but I was going to stay, didn't want to go that far from home. So what I chose to do is I stayed in New York City. And I went to Barnard College. At that time, you could not go to Columbia. Barnard was the only option for women.
Okay.
And they told me, oh, this is not, it turned out to be a great place. I learned a lot in terms of music, and maybe we can discuss it a little later. But I did not choose it for its music. I chose it because I could be independent, but not far from home. And then I decided I wasn't getting enough music, so I spent my junior year at Mannes College of Music at that time.
Okay.
When I went on to graduate school, that turned out not to be my best decision either. I went up to Harvard, and we can talk about that a bit later. But I went up because one of the people I was studying with privately gave me a list of teachers in various places, and he thought that maybe I should work with Leon Kirshner. So I did that, and I had applied to a few other schools, and I got into most of them. But I went up there. And I also naively thought that if you went to a really good school, it would help later on in life. And then I came back and I went to Columbia, and it was a result of things that had happened at Harvard. I got my doctorate at Columbia.
Okay. In music composition?
Yeah. My undergraduate degree was in music because I didn't have a music composition degree. My master's and doctorate is in music composition. And quite frankly, when I advise students, I advise them not to get a degree in music composition, a doctorate, I mean, because teaching opportunities are better if you have a degree in either theory or musicology. When I was starting to teach, I could teach theory. But now a lot of places, if they want you to teach theory, they want a theory degree. You know that all too well.
Yeah. Share me more a little bit about that. I'm curious. So you recommend to major music theory other than music composition?
Or music history. I mean, I love music history. And if I were going through, even though I think musicology has some stuff that would be annoying to study, I mean, because if like every degree, I think I've taught music history most of the time. I started by teaching some theory. And then at one point at Peabody, I was teaching a course called style analysis. And they said, this really goes across theory and music history. Which department do you want to be in? And I said, I found out that theory had meetings every week, and music history never met at all. And I said, I want to be in music history. And I had equivalent credentials because I had written the 20th century section of the Schirmer History of Music. So without having that degree, I was still able to teach music history.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I remember I was one of the auditors in your history class. Do you remember? Yes. So I really learned a lot from the class and really appreciate you allowing me to be an auditor. So
it was great. I always love having students who want to learn something.
oh, so that really encouraged me to not giving up things, but I try to hard keep moving on. So you part of my inspiration, and really I wanted to express that my grateful gratitude to you today. So I really thank you again. As a student, having a inspiration teacher is really a blessing. So yes, so it just reminded me the moment that I was in the class and you're teaching in history, and I also took your Shostakovich class. So, and I learned a lot from the class too. So there was like most of really great memories at Mannes, other than music composition lesson.
And teaching that, one of the things that I liked about teaching at Mannes was that I gave graduate courses and I could choose the topics. So, I mean, I was able to learn pieces that I liked, and that made a big difference in my composing as I went on.
Do you still teach at Mannes?
No, I left Mannes 10 years ago. The school, I think 10 years ago. The school, no, 9 years ago, excuse me. I left in 2016.
Ah, okay.
The school has changed a lot in terms of its orientation and its outlook. So a lot of faculty left. There are other there, but it's a very different school at the moment. I went to teach at NYU and at Juilliard Extension. I left NYU about a year ago. And next year, I won't be doing much at anything at Juilliard Extension, although I have also given some independent lectures at a couple of senior centers. And I may continue doing one of those. And I have one or two private students. And so I'm still doing a little bit of teaching, but I really want to focus now on composing and living and catching up. I mean, I have closets that need to be sorted. My life is not sorted outside of the world of music. I mean, not my life, personal life, but I mean, physical stuff in my house needs to be sorted and put in order as I go on, because nobody's going to do that.
Right. Yes, that's right.
I mean, you're lucky. Every time one moves, I think one sorts by the process of moving.
Yes.
I need more recently.
Yes. I'm so thankful that really, I truly, yes. You always inspire me, as I don't know, like very energetic and strong and consistent and very responsible, So I always inspire your those energy from, since since I met you at Menace. So that sometimes whenever I, having a hard time or feeling down, then I try to think all the good teachers in my memory. So then it gives me really positive energy, and I'm so thankful that you are the one of them, and you still I can talk, in this format anyway. Yeah, so you should remember me.
At any time, you could just call and talk.
Yeah.
Especially now, even from Korea, I know there's a time change, but there's WhatsApp and there's all kinds of ways of talking without. And possible to keep in touch with the whole world without writing letters at the moment.
Sure. Well, I can coordinate a Menace alumni with, all people around you, and then, we just do the Zoom gathering or something like that.
Whatever you go.
Yeah.
I mean, the people you knew at Mass, because it's been a big changeover. Some of the same people are there, but some of the same people are not there anymore.
Yeah, but you know what? Most of my friends from Menace, we are always talking about you with really good memories. So we really, happy with sharing the same memories. So, oh yes, I learned from her. We had a good time, and I learned from this thing. So that's kind of really common things. Really give us like connection. So if it happened, like, I can really love to coordinate this kind of gathering with you. That will be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll do it at a later hour here so that you're not up in the middle of the night.
No worries. It'll work anyway. I'll make it work.
Sure you will.
Yes.
You have a tremendous amount of energy, tremendous amount of
Thing.
enthusiasm and initiative. And I think the stuff you've done has been really remarkable over the years.
Thank you very much. I feel so grateful. So my next question will be maybe a little bit related to like career. So as someone who has balanced careers in both teaching and composing, how have these two roles influenced each other throughout your life?
Okay, first of all, I'm going to want to read a quote from someone who says it better than I do. So there was a scientist called Richard Feynman, who was a physicist, and he wrote books, and he said, if you want to master something, teach it. The more you teach, the better you learn. Teaching is a powerful tool for learning. And my other favorite quote, since I teach music theater, is from Oscar Hammerstein in The King and I, said, when you become a teacher, by your pupils you are taught. So teaching has been tremendously important to me in so many ways, in terms of pieces that I've learned, in terms of learning what influences my students, in terms of learning a new repertoire, in terms of solidifying what I've done. I mean, when I studied counterpoint, and in various ways, including when I was a freshman at Barnard, I took a course in counterpoint with So-and-so, who years and years later was introducing me to people because he was so impressed that I got an A in counterpoint. And I did it by, I count 16th century counterpoint exercises on the track. But when I went to teach it, I realized that I still didn't know it. I couldn't really teach it properly. even though I got an A in the course, and back then it was not that easy to get an A. It's not like everybody got A's.
Right.
I still didn't really know it internally. So by teaching it, I really learned it. So I learned a lot of things. I learned to hear better, even though I had a ton of sight singing. And when I did a placement test at Hatton School of Music at Mannes, I placed really high. I went through all their exercises because I could do it, but I learned to hear better by teaching, teaching sight singing. I learned so much repertoire. I learned to communicate ways that I work. There's just so much that I gained from teaching. And to reverse it in terms of how I teach, I always teach as a composer. And I tell people that when I was doing the courses at Juilliard Extension, which were for a more general audience, one of the first things I said is my approach will be that of a composer, because that's what interests me. That's what I look at. And I know that there are some people who look at music in terms of the details of theory or something. I look at shape. I look at line. I look at impact. I look at history. There's so many things I look at, but I look at them as a composer. And in fact, I have friends who are musicians who I've known since college. And when they go to concerts, because they tend to go for the performers. So they'll say, so-and-so, and there's some amazing performers in New York, like Yu Jia Wang, is playing a concert. Don't you want to go here? And it's like, I wouldn't mind hearing her, but I go for the program. If she were going to play a program I wanted to hear, music I want to hear, then I would go. But to just hear her play, I wouldn't do that. As wonderful as she is, as wonderful it would be, because to me, I want to absorb more. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly absorbing things. And that is really a part of how I approach teaching and what I've learned from teaching and what it's given to me, and also how I approach composing. It's my outlook.
Right. Right. Wow, that's amazing. So across your career, you've developed a truly distinctive compositional voice. How has your approach to sound and structure evolved over time?
Well, when I was in music school, mainly Dalcroze, we didn't actually look at music past Debussy and Ravel. It was very old-fashioned, which isn't bad, but that was what we did. When I went to college, I went to Barnard, but all the music courses were at Columbia. And that's when there were all kinds of organizations that were very active at that time. So I got exposed to a lot of newer techniques. In fact, one of the things was I was lucky enough to take a course with Henry Cowell, was in his last year of teaching when I was fortunately, I left high school early, so I was able to take a course with Henry Cowell. And he's the one who wrote New Musical Resources, and he presented all of this. So I was exposed to more modern techniques, and slowly I incorporated some of them within what I did. And I was exposed to 12-tone music, but I was never interested in being a 12-tone composer. It didn't make sense to me to just do this intellectual stuff. And I'm not putting down my friends, some of whom are really amazing 12-tone composers, and it's not that I don't admire the people who started it. I mean, some of Schoenberg, some of Berg, some of Webern are amazing, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't a way that I wanted to work. So I kind of went on. And then in the later 70s and early 80s, I moved to Baltimore, and a colleague of mine was Robert Hall Lewis, and I went to concerts around there. And a lot of what was happening was still music that was very complex.
Oh, wow.
And my music became more abstract and more complex. And that was really part of what happened. Again, it wasn't that I was consciously doing it. I was just hearing all of this.
Right.
And then at a certain point, music started getting simpler. And again, it wasn't that I consciously said, okay, this is the trend, or I'm going to write for people, or they're going to do my music if I get simpler. But somehow in the process, my music became simpler. And also, I think when I went through this college stuff, we were kind of told to avoid emotion in music. It was like, it should be abstract, it should be scientific, it shouldn't be emotional. Even though I later discovered, it took me many, many years, but I discovered, for instance, the Xenakis with all his formulas, he was really covering his emotion. He had this great reaction to the war, and he was covering it with all the scientific things that he put on top of it. And there are others that, I mean, in a sense, Bach did that he had all these procedures that covered his true religious emotion. I don't think the music wasn't emotional, but he had procedures that kept things in check. Then I became unafraid. I realized this is who I am, that people like music. I learned from my later students, people like emotion, that's okay in music. So I became more myself, and I became simpler, and and maybe it's a part of aging, because I noticed, and I'm not comparing myself at all to him, but I've taught Bartok among the other people I've taught. He went through a cycle where he started out much more tonal. He became very much more complex, and he went back to simpler. And maybe that's a product also of getting older. I'm not sure. But that is kind of where I am, and that was my trajectory in terms of my composition.
Wow, this whole journey of being a composer by yourself. Wow, that's great story. I love to dig more your music now. So I love to hear about the genesis of work like Free Pain and the Wings Night, and what artistic or personal impulse leads you to these large scale compositions. You may include the Manhattan Story. I know you mentioned that it's the name of the record album, but you know, everything you love to talk about it, and I love to hear it.
Okay. Well, I'll talk about basically 3 pieces because, as you know,
Sure.
all of us could talk forever. And maybe, we should do it on a recorded way, and we'll just discuss music,
Sure.
talk about stuff. But let me start with a Free Pen. That came about because my publisher at the time was Raoul Ronson of Seesaw Music. He later died, and it was bought by Subito, and now my staff is part of Subito Press under a Seesaw label. But they are a publisher; they're not just a distributor for me. And he thought I should write something to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Bill of Rights, and so I started researching, and free speech has been really, really important to me. So I researched a lot of historical figures, and one was Socrates, of course, he was forced to drink poison because of his beliefs, and one was Baruch de Spinoza, who was a philosopher, but because of his beliefs and because of his critique of his own Jewish synagogue, he was expelled from the Jewish people. And I said his excommunication. That the word, because they start out to excommunicate someone, they start out with this very dramatic "Cursed be he, day and night." It was cursed in all kinds of things. And oh my God, he was just expressing what he believed. And I also looked at John Peter Zenger, who was tried for libel, and that led to the whole idea of the free press. And I went through many other people who were involved with this. And I've always believed that free speech doesn't involve silencing one side or the other. I don't mean that you can being Jewish, it's not okay to say kill the Jews. I mean,
Right.
that implies action. But I believe that unless you hear both sides, you don't really know what's going on. So that I kind of end the piece with a quotation from Euripides, which I had put in earlier. And let me see, I think I wrote it down because I've been told that anytime I quote anything, I screw it up by doing my own improvisation on it. So,
Sure. Lovely.
okay, so it ends with, who can give judgment? Who can grasp arguments? Air from both sides. He clearly learned their pleas. So if you don't know both sides of an argument, if you can't listen to both sides of an argument, you can't make a judgment. It's important to hear both sides. And we're so busy even now trying to shut down one side or the other. No, I mean, people say, I've unfriended this person on Facebook because they wrote X. And my thought is, no, don't unfriend them. Listen to what they say. You might 100% disagree with them, but listen to what they say, because they're coming from a place where there's a reason that they're saying what they're saying. And that is what to me is important. So that was, and it's obviously, since the piece was written in 1991, it's been important. That piece, by the way, didn't get performed until 2016 when 2 of my Manus students, bless their hearts, the third friend, put it on as a concert, and the piece is now actually available on YouTube. And then you asked about The Wings of Night. Believe it or not, we're thinking finally of issuing a recording of that based on a performance that took place. We're going to issue a live recording from several years ago.
Oh, wow.
But The Wings of Night came from, I don't know if you ran across him at Manus, but there was someone who taught humanities named Ray Weissman. You might not have, because it wasn't something you were taking. He was more doing one of the undergraduate humanities courses. He, after I don't know how many years, he spent decades on his doctorate, but he had finally finished it. And it was about night. And what he said was that day has only one aspect, but night has two. It has the joyous and it has the horrible. I was thinking about that. And then there's a a guitarist I worked with a lot by the name of Volkmar Zimmerman. And he actually had, at that point, we had done a few pieces together and we ended up recording a CD together called Transatlantic Tales. But he was playing with a chorus in Lithuania, and he asked me if I would write a piece for guitar and chorus. And I thought, okay, this is perfect. And so the piece shows various aspects of night. The sexual, joyous part, the terrible part that covers up crimes, the celebration, like a Saturday night dance or Saturday night party. And all of those went into The Wings of Night. And I must say that both of these pieces are written in sections. I'm not really good at writing a really long piece just by itself. I don't know how. I'm more like Ravel does the same thing. Again, not that I'm comparing myself, but if you look at Ravel's music, and operas or something are written in small little sections. They're not flowing through the way someone like Wagner's music were flowing. And so I kind of work smaller, but that's how those two pieces, bigger pieces, came about. And the piece Left Behind is on the Manhattan Stories recording. It's one of the pieces. And Ann Ellsworth helped me put together the recording. But it arose, Ann Ellsworth was a composer. I'm saying a performer. I keep saying composer. A former resident. She's a horn player. Lang College. And when I was teaching at Manus, I also did a course at Lang, which is also part of the new school. And I did courses in Manus Extension. I taught in different divisions of the new school.
Oh, yeah.
And so she did a concert and she had played some of my pieces. And then she did another one. And so I went to hear her. I always tend to try to hear colleagues whenever I can. And she did this piece called Left Right. And she did it with a singer called Joe Williamson. And at that time, this was before, Anne has since, she's one of the most remarkable people I know. She has adopted 5 special needs children, and she actually wrote a book about it. But this was before all that. And she had gotten remarried, I guess, fairly recently. And her husband went to Iraq. And he was there for a year. And ultimately, she couldn't stand it. And she's writing about that experience. The piece was so powerful that she put on.
Wow.
And the combination of horn and singer were just so amazing that I really wanted to write a piece for her. And so I wrote Left Behind, which is about, first of all, it interested me because when people wrote about the war and not just the Iraqi war, but wars in general, they write soldiers, they write about the horror, they write about the killing, they write about the mistreatment of prisoners, which are all very, very important, but they don't talk about the suffering of the people who are left at home.
Right.
And so this piece could be about people who are left behind at home. It could be about people who have lost a loved one. It could be about people who lost a relationship. It works in many levels, but that was my idea behind Left Behind. And that's what I created.
That's so touching.
Well, her story was incredible. It really was.
Wow. So, but your idea was not focusing on the what happening, but left behind the people who really, grieve and, suffer from the event. So that's kind of very touching me and remind me one of my works too. And relate to that. Do you remember my piano solo piece, Drenity for,
That one.
yeah. So do you remember, I don't know, you remember you told me this after the concert, you really gave me such a great complimentary for the piece, and then you mentioned that the piece is very touching and powerful. You should keep doing this. So that's really that day was like I was almost like a cry. So thank you so much for that encouraging words to me on that day. How much those like warm, heartwarming words, made me growing and thinking more and writing more better way and thinking, very openly. So I really remember that day.
Well, I always tell people, which is true, that I am not kind, I am honest. So if I told that to you, I truly believed it. It wasn't just a let's be nice to our former student kind of thing.
Yeah, so that really speak to me. So I think I felt that like 100% like So was very thankful to hear that from, especially from you. So maybe it's kind of similar context. So many of your works seem to carry an emotional and sometimes social weight. How do you view the role of music as a form of advocacy or commentary?
Well, I think that I can answer more generally and then come back to my.
Sure.
In general, I think music is a powerful force. I think it's a very human force. Unfortunately, a friend of mine has developed Alzheimer's and she's now nationalized and she barely recognizes. She knows that if we go to visit her, that it's people she knew, but she doesn't remember very much. But when they come in and they bring a guitarist or a pianist, and I was there one time when they did it, she can remember the words and she can sing along. And while she can still talk and stuff, I've seen people who have Alzheimer's who no longer can talk, but can sing and can remember the pieces of their childhood. So I think music has a very emotional content. I also, one of the many courses I taught a mini course on Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for Juilliard Extension. The things I learned was how the message of his was used in various ways. That it was used when Bernstein conducted it to commemorate the fall of Berlin Wall. And there was a tradition, which I hadn't known about till I taught this course, that in Japan, every year they perform the Beethoven's Ninth, and they do it with huge choruses. One of the choruses is 10,000 singers.
Wow.
And they do the Beethoven Ninth. It's a Christmas tradition. And so I can see the power going across cultures of certain music. I'm not sure that I could say the same about my own. I mean, it's a very unusual piece that gets to do that. And I think composers were somewhat had the idea that music could change the world before World War I and after in Germany. And I think that they discovered that no, they couldn't prevent the oncoming wars. They couldn't prevent the rise of Nazism. They couldn't. Their music did not, or their art or their literature did not have that power. So I don't think that my music changes the world, but I do think it is a commentary on things I believe in. A lot of my music is abstract, but I do, as you notice, pieces with social commentary. We talked about A Free Pen. I also wrote for my doctoral dissertation a piece called The Miracle of Nemirov, which is about a rabbi who does a good deed. And it was really about kindness and the importance of kindness in the world. And I still remember that it was a Jewish short story, speaking of going from my childhood, by a man named Peretz. And this Litvak stood for Lithuanian Jew that would be skeptical. This Litvak, when he used to be asked of where the rabbi goes, he was always skeptical. But after he kind of hid and followed the rabbi and found out that he had helped a poor woman by chopping her wood and not charging, and all of this helpfulness, when the opera ends with when people ask him now, where does the rabbi go? And then the answer is he goes to heaven. And the Litvak says, if not still higher. And that was the name of the story that I took it from, if not still higher.
I see. Wow.
So, I mean, that was a commentary I've written about. I've said Kafka because of the absurdity of certain imprisonments. I've said, and that was another thing. I've said For Showing Truth, which is about someone who was imprisoned by the state for telling truth, showing truth. And it was a choral piece. So I do have pieces that have social commentary because the text appeals to me. I do have pieces that are emotional in content because that is the way I write. I write, I know this sounds terrible, but I really write for myself. I write because I have no choice. I write because, as Xenakis once said, when Xenakis was asked why he wrote, and he said he writes because it makes him a little bit less unhappy. And I'm not saying that I'm unhappy, but the sentiment got to me. I write because when I become too unhappy and too thrown off, I have a good friend and he gets on the phone and he's not a musician. He says, I think it's time for you to start composing again. So, I mean, those are the reasons I write. Do I expect it to change the world? No. If people pick up on it, great. It would be wonderful. But I'm expressing who I am and what I think. And hopefully others will share my vision, but I don't write for an audience. Maybe you're supposed to, I'm not sure, but I can't do that. I write from what I think and what I believe. I mean, I will go to a level, like I just finished a piece for 2 trombones. It's written for the first time for upper high school, low college, because that's what they wanted. But I didn't really, other than changing the range a little bit, I didn't really change anything about my style. I didn't say, okay, I have to adjust it this way.
Right. Wow. So you write every level of music, like open to anyone for writing?
Well, mainly I write, it depends. There's some pieces that, especially earlier pieces that are just written for professionals. I have a piece for oboe that's written for with a lot of multiphonics and other advanced techniques because the oboist wanted something like that. And it took him 6 months to learn it. And it takes other oboists quite a while to learn it. That's certainly not for beginners. And I have other pieces that are really, really complex and only can be played by a few talented people. But I have other pieces that are work on different levels. So I wouldn't say I can write really, really simple music. My publisher during COVID was putting together an anthology of piano pieces that he actually has published of pieces on different level. And I write a piece called Singing My Song. And it's not, it can certainly be played by young performers, but it can't be played, it didn't quite get as simple as I thought it would get. So I do write on different levels, but not for really beginning students, because I guess if I were asked to, maybe I could try it, but that wasn't a level that my thinking had reached.
Right. So do you have your personal publisher or publisher who worked for you for a long time?
I've been with, I signed with Seesaw Music when I was in my mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
The first piece I had published was a piece for solo saxophone. This was a publisher who had been used by one of my former teachers,
Oh, wow.
and I stayed with him. I know that now people self-publish, but I also know myself.
Right.
And maybe if I had a partner who wanted to do things for me, that would be different, but I am constitutionally lazy. I do not like to go to the post office. I do not like to mail out scores. And now you can do it with PDFs, but
Right.
I do not like to handle the logistics. I do not like to collect money. I do not like to do, so I have just stayed with my publisher. I understand that I'm not making, he's getting 90% and I'm getting 10%. But first of all, my music, if my music started selling in the millions, which I'm not expecting, I mean, that might be different, but I don't make that much money off of the sales of music. And even if I collected all of it, I'd probably make a couple $1,000 based on my royalties. This way he registers it. And I say he because he is a he. All kinds of things along. So I prefer working with a traditional publisher just because, as I said, I know myself.
I see. It's good advice for composers, please know yourself first and then work on work on.
Right. Well, I mean, there are people who are great at running their own business. There are people who want to run their own business. There are people who want super control. There are people who want all kinds of things. And I just want to finish the piece and not think about it. I mean, I haven't been really good at self-promotion. Not that a publisher really does that much either, but at least it's out there. All of those things. And part of that comes from the generation that I came from, although other people learned quite well. And so a publisher really does work for me.
Right. Wow.
Actually, this one, which we've worked it out so that unlike a lot of the other pieces, we've worked it out so he takes everything that I give him. Which is pretty unusual.
Right. So publisher reach out to you or you contact him to publish your music? How does that
No,
work?
when I have a new piece, well, first of all, with Seesaw, I had reached out to them and then we kept going. But when it was sold to Subito, I did meet with them and we eventually reached an accommodation where they would take everything that I wrote, which is a very unusual. I'm the only Seesaw composer, they pointed out to me, that has their own webpage on the Subito site. They've been great about it. And they haven't even made corrections like they have to other people, because I think I've learned how to put in page turns and cueing, doing it the old-fashioned way with onion skin. So, but no, I have not reached out. I just finish a piece and I write to them and say, okay, I now have these ready to go. And here they are.
Wow. I mean, personally, I was very hard to find my publisher for a long time, but I finally have it. But nowadays digitization is like so much give us freedom to do the self-publication. But everybody has different preference and the workflow. So I kind of understand how amazed you are already have the publication in your 20s and they work with them for a long time. Wow.
The other thing is, if you self-publish, then how is your music going to exist after you? I mean, if you have children, I guess, and they care,
Right.
they can maybe keep things going. And I know you're really young to think about this, and it's not the time yet, but how the advantage of a publisher is, I am sure that if they go under, they will sell the catalog or move the catalog or do something to make sure that the pieces that they have will go, I'm not sure, but I think They will make sure that the pieces go on, that they will be available. But if you self-publish, then I guess at some point you could join an organization like ACA, which has a legacy thing and will keep it going. But that's another consideration, is what happens.
Right. Yeah, that's really really great advice for younger composers who really not think of like their publication or self branding or something like that.
Well, they can, but then what provisions are you going to make as
Yeah.
maybe not yet, but maybe when you turn 60 or 65 or 70, you want to start thinking along those lines. Or if you develop a major disease at another age, you want to start thinking along those lines. At least have a plan in the back of your mind.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I need to start thinking about that too.
But you're very young. You don't think yet.
And
But it never hurts to, have considered it and then put it away for another 10 years or so.
right. So I have to keep my health, strong and stable.
Yeah. I mean, if something happens to you, would your husband have instructions as to what to do?
Right.
Man, this may not happen for another 50 years, but life is unpredictable.
Right. Yes, that's true. So yeah. Maybe this is my personal question too, but maybe other composers and artists as a woman would be interested in me ask you. You've been a significant advocate for women in music throughout your career. How have you seen the landscape shift for women composers, and what challenges still remain?
Well, to answer this, I should start by telling you about my experiences at Harvard, because what happened to me there would not happen again.
Love to hear it.
When I was at Harvard, I was there from 69 to 71. This was the beginning of the revised women's movement. It happened in the 1920s, and it was coming back. And so the university did a survey about women in various departments. I know that my chairman, I did not see the whole survey, but there was excerpts that were published, so I know. And the chairman of my department said, there are some things that women shouldn't do, such as shovel coal and write music. So, I mean, that was the start. And then I met with the composer Earl Kim, and he told me that I would never get a doctorate anywhere, that I didn't have the talent. I didn't have the ability, which is why I tell people, you can't be discouraged. And I was furious, because the program at Harvard, unlike the program at Columbia, where you got a master's and you had to reapply and go into a doctorate, the program at Harvard assumed that you were going from a master's into a doctorate. That was how it was set up. Of course, some of my fellow composers told me I was lucky this happened, because they were stretched out for many years and then had problems.
I see.
So I was really angry, and I consulted a well-known lawyer, Leonard Boudin, who laughed, and he said, go for it, but I can't help you because I'm part of Harvard. So I can't sue my own school, kind of thing.
I see.
I went to, I can't remember which government agency. It was like the equivalent of human rights organization for the state. And I said, are you going to do something about this? And they said, we're sorry, we can't do anything because private universities are allowed to discriminate. And so I was asked to leave Harvard, and I was told that I had only been accepted because they were told that they should be accepting women. They shouldn't have an all-male program. It went on and on. And I was hurt. I was furious. But Otto Luening came along, who had been my teacher at Barnard, where I was really highly regarded. And he said, look, we have a doctoral program. Come do your doctorate back here. And so I did. I did it at Columbia. And I think I succeeded in becoming a composer. A good one or a bad one, but he succeeded. He couldn't tell me that I couldn't become a composer, but that would not happen again. And then when I was writing music, people would come up to me and, especially men would come up to me and say, the biggest compliment of all, you write like a man. She heard that. Well, thank you. I suppose that's supposed to be a compliment, but again, that wouldn't happen. So I think that even though there's still progress to be made, the journey, what I think some younger composers don't see is that the journey that went from where things were to where things are now has been immense already. And I think that for some younger women, they may not be having problems. The reason I say this is that as you know, I'm the secretary to the Board of New York Women Composers, of which you are a member. And we tried to recruit some younger composers. And the very young composers were told, that we don't need New York women composers. And one of the things about New York women composers is we give seed money grants, which allow people to apply and get a lot of performances. So what they were saying is they don't need help getting performances of the very young. I think that probably mid-level composers and older composers are still could use some assistance in performance and things that come up. And I'm sure that they may be facing various obstacles. It's just that it's not a world that I'm really part of because I have seen the other side of it, if you know what I mean.
Right. Yes, totally get it. Yes. Wow. I'm so sorry, but you such an inspirational story.
Well, you have to go on. If that's what you want to do, if that's where your soul is, who are they to tell you that you can't do something
Right.
or that you won't do something?
Yeah. If someone who has the same problem like you, then how would you advise them?
Well, first of all, they wouldn't have the same problem because it is possible to sue any university at the moment over something, and nobody would discriminate that blatantly. They would do it in a subtle way that might be hard to pick up on, which is good and bad. So I don't think it would be the same problem, but I would say believe in yourself and go forward and find the places that want you and the people who want you and work with that. And I've always been encouraging to my students. I always believe in them. I always think, why would you tell someone what they can't do? Help them do what they want to do better.
Right.
So
That's so true.
yeah.
I mean, you encourage a lot of people now.
Trying.
I mean, your life is just so powerful. After a lifetime dedicated to music, what do you consider your most meaningful contribution, not just in terms of works, but in terms of impact on the field?
Well, I think that there may be several, but one of them has been my work with the International Women's Brass Conference. It was founded by Susan Slaughter because at that time there were very few women who had first chairs or even other chairs who were brass players in major orchestras. This was like 32 years ago. So it's a while, but it's not ancient history.
Right.
And I think she might have asked me to join the board. And she before I do that, she's founded the organization to support women brass players, to encourage women brass players, and also the men who support women brass players. It's not limited to women, the organization. And I think she asked me to join the board because in addition to having met me and been recommended by people, I was one of the relatively few composers who was writing for brass at that time. That many women writing pieces for brass instruments. And by serving several times on their, I've been on their board since it was founded. And by serving on the composition committee, which I chaired several times, and helping to commission various women by pointing out that the competitions that the organization ran had to include works by women. It's not, if you're going to be women brass players, include compositions by women. It should have been obvious, but I had to, it wasn't until I pointed it out. Women's pieces to be on the program that were done at the conferences. And if you picked up a conference program from 1993, the first conference, and you picked up a program from a few weeks ago, which was our latest conference in Hartford, you would see that from having like maybe one woman on one of several programs, the programs are probably at least half or more pieces by women who come into these conferences, both by male players and female players. So I think that in a small way, I've made a contribution to the brass repertoire and in terms of encouraging other people and people to look at this kind of music and think about it and commission women. Again, I wasn't alone, but I think that in a small way, I may have made a difference there.
Right. Do you have any advice for me to support more underrepresented artists or composers in the future?
Advice for you? You mean
Yeah.
for me? In terms of presenting how?
Well,
I mean, in a concert, in an interview, I mean, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
it just reminds me, I found my association from New York City, and with which I was trying to contribute myself to, the music scenes who probably like a unfair opportunity in various situations. Other than just creating projects, any other ways I can support people?
Well, I think that's important, joining organizations, forming organizations, putting out calls, making people aware. But I mean, in South Korea, for instance, I haven't looked recently, but I don't know how many women composers are being performed. And it maybe there's nothing you could do, but maybe it's a question of making the conductors aware and maybe find a few really good pieces by Korean. It doesn't have to be Korean, but by Korean composers or Korean American composers, however you want to do it. And, suggest, is this something that you might consider? Would you be willing to look at these scores? Could diversify what you are offering and see how they react? I mean, maybe go to smaller organizations, maybe start with schools, but maybe just speak to some people and see if they aren't programming these composers because they don't know about them, or they aren't programming them because they haven't thought about them, or why is this existing? If you really wanted to go all out, you could run a brass conference in Korea.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
They did one in Japan 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I mean, one could run one via International Women's Brass Conference in Korea with help from family organizations, or you could run another kind of conference, or it depends. There's so many things. I think anything you do is positive. And anytime you make performers more aware to diversify, and what you're saying to them, I think, is, I don't want you to play bad music. I don't want you to play a piece just because it's written by a woman or by a Korean or by a this or by a that. I want you to play this music because there's a lot of really great music that you haven't looked at, you don't know, and you might want to consider, that's really well written for your instrument or your instruments. And can I send you some examples? Or would you like me to consult with you? Or do you want any help? And see how it goes. I mean, and be prepared for rejection, because you have such a bubbly personality. I can't imagine anybody saying no to you, but
wow. Yeah, see, you just gave me so much ideas to do something.
I'm sure you will. I have no doubt about it.
Thank you so much. Sadly, this might be our last question for you today. Are there projects or ideas you're currently exploring that you're particularly excited about and would like to share?
One of the things that I am going to do, and it actually, this came from someone who was actually, there's a composer, Matthew Jarosowicz, I always screw up his pronunciation of his name, who has been conducting in Canton. And he's going to continue with the youth symphony. I think he was in your Shostakovich class. He has asked me to write a piece for the Canton Youth Symphony for February, and that's going to be my next project. I've been mainly doing smaller pieces because that's where the performances have been, but I am really excited about being able to write for orchestra. And also, I was supposed to go this year to Brazil as a composer in residence via New York Women Composers. I don't know if you had an open call for pieces for that Brazilian festival. He and I talked, and because of certain political things, he didn't think this was a good year to go down.
Oh, I see.
I'll go down. The plan is for me to go down next summer and be composer in residence. And I'm really looking forward to working with young musicians there and coaching my pieces and part of a different culture. I just find the whole idea really exciting.
Right.
And then other things will come along, I'm sure.
Sure. Wow. You have so much energy.
Sometimes.
No, I can see your energy.
You bring out the best in me.
Oh, thank you so much. So you have another schedule today?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? Do I have another schedule?
I mean, other like work hour or teaching or anything?
Actually, I'm going out to the Brooklyn Academy later tonight to hear a piece by Zemlinsky, which is being done by the person who runs the company is actually somebody I met through Manus, and I tend to support his little opera company. But also, I like Zemlinsky. I like works that came out of the Weimar Republic, among my other real loves.
Right.
And my friend and I are going out, and since we're leaving at 5, that doesn't leave too much more time to the day. But hopefully I'll get a chance to just, I'm not, just catch up on some things that didn't go out in terms of composition, so that I can get back to making the compositional corrections I need to make in a few things, so that then I can get back to writing this orchestral piece. And maybe I'll spend a little time today thinking about the piece, because that's a lot of fun.
Yes. Wow. Amazing. So you keep yourself busy and, keep working and thinking and meeting and getting energy from like musical things.
Oh, yeah. I like to go to concerts. I like to go to plays. I like to go to art museums. I like to go to see friends. I exercise. I love water aerobics.
Right.
There isn't enough time in the day.
Right.
Yeah, what?
Which museum you love to go in general?
Well, I like to go to several of them, but my total favorite, one of my total favorites is the Neue Gallery, which specializes in Austrian and German art, especially from 1900 to 1940 or so. And it's cool enough, and it has a lot of the art that I love. But I also go to many other museums. There's a show at the Jewish Museum of Ben Shahn I want to see. There's a show of Sargent at the Met that I want to see. I haven't been to the reopened Frick. And so there's so much to see. And that's why I love New York. There's so much to see and so many people. And it's a great city.
I miss so much that part, right? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, thank you so much for today being with me. And great story and great inspiration, great comments and advice. I love to have you back sometimes.
Anytime you want. I'm glad to either do it formally or informally. Just talk with you. And again, when you come to New York, let me know.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Well, have a good night's sleep since it's the middle of the night for you.
Thank you. Bye.